Welcome back, friends. In my last video, when I was discussing threat modeling, I presented threat modeling as it is described in Cybex 9th edition book for CISSP, and basically it consists of four different steps, and they are in sequence. I kind of discussed those steps in some detail and try to present you how these four steps are executed and what are the different models used at what layers. So when it comes to identifying threats, it could be proactive or reactive approach. Reactive is mainly like threat hunting exercise. Now, proactive approaches are good, but it's not always possible to only go for proactive approach. So in real life, we have a mix of both proactive and reactive approach. Now, then we go to, determining and diagramming potential attacks, where the attack vector can enter in our environment. Then we do reduction analysis and then prioritization and response to the rated threats. That's the summary of what I discussed in my last video. However, what I feel is that I was not able to present you a real example, a real demonstration where I can show you what is meant by reduction analysis or decomposition analysis, which is the step number 3. Step number 1 is very much clear. I think if we look into the different models like Stride, PASTA, VAST, STL, which is explained in my last video, it will be very self-evident. And determining and diagramming potential attacks is also very quite clear. There is no further discussion required on this topic. However, if you think that it's required, you can comment in the video. Now, reduction analysis, let me just try to focus on this topic and try to show you what I mean by reduction analysis here. Now, if I go to the new page, to understand reduction analysis or decomposition analysis, basically you have to go back and see my video where I have explained the security zones or network zones and kind of marry that video with my episode number 23. But it will be too difficult, I think, to do this analysis manually. So let me make the job easy here. So I will go with my favorite architecture, favorite network diagram, which I always draw. That we take an example of a company who is connected with the internet. So I will quickly draw it. Then sorry, this one. And again a firewall. I will explain why I'm actually drawing these many boxes. So, okay, now let me take. So internet, you all know, this is internet, right? And now a company is connected to internet with some sort of internet edge device. It's not necessarily only a firewall, it's just a typical diagram, right? So this is my, what I call it as internet edge device, IED, right? It is called internet firewall. And now what this firewall does is actually it separates the whole environment into two different security zone. This zone is untrusted, and this is called DMZ. The only reason why we call it untrusted, because the computers or system who will start a connection from internet is from a place where our own information security policy is not applied. On top of that, we don't know the source IP address. What source IP address are going to come in our environment. That's why we call it untrusted. We don't trust them, right? In terms of information security, it's not like we are kind of behaving racism in internet, no, but it's just because they are not following our own accepted information security policy. Now the DMZ is going to have many systems. It will definitely have those systems which will require a direct internet access, and it will serve a gateway for all the internal applications to go to the internet, right? So there will be a couple of servers hanging around here. I'm not going to go in too much detail. I have already explained this in my network segmentation video. You can refer in the playlist. Now, this firewall is understood that this is the internet edge device. We call it as internet firewall. Firewall because it's a firewall, and internet because it is connected to internet. Now, we need another layer of security where we kind of terminate our vendors, vendor 1, vendor 2, or partner 1, partner 2. So vendors and partners are also not trusted, but they are not untrusted. What I mean by that is, in internet, you don't control who is going to come. You don't know the source IP address. Anyone can come. But in this segment, where you have vendors and partners, you know the source IP addresses of those vendors and partners. So this is the distinction. Even on internet cloud, you may have some vendors and partners, but those are on the public cloud. So we have this internet firewall acting as a layer, and it is providing a separation between internet and our enterprise. And our enterprise first gateway is basically internet firewall. Now this firewall is called extranet firewall, and this is called semi-trusted, right? Why this is semi-trusted? Because this firewall is creating a zone where at least we know that who is going to come. It may be DHL, it may be FedEx, it may be some printing services. So those kind of system or company can terminate here. Or the people who want some information from us, we are feeding them. So those kind of connection can come here. You may think of cloud connection as well. If they are coming via private line, they can come terminate on semi-trusted zone, right? Then we have another firewall who actually separates DMZ. This is DMZ to the rest of intranet, where we have, you may call it a production firewall, and this firewall will be intranet firewall. So think of internet firewall as a main gate, entrance gate of your house. Then you have DMZ, which is like a kind of guest room. And now DMZ also connects to a special room where some of the guests can stay for a day or two. Then you have a hallway, which is kind of intranet firewall. And behind the hallway, you have your own bedroom. And the bedroom is separated by another gate, another firewall, which is a production firewall. Now, these are the security layers, basically. If you look into my visual drawing, in reduction analysis, which is basically decomposing of anything which is of interest for our analysis. It may be the infrastructure, it may be the database, it may be the application or anything. So first we have to identify what are the trust boundaries, right? So trust boundaries are any location where the level of trust or security changes. Now come back to the diagram. Here you see that in the case of an internet firewall, you will see that the trust is changing from untrusted to DMZ. So this is one trust boundary, right? The another trust boundary is between intranet and DMZ. This is another trust boundary. Then another trust boundary is from semi-trusted to DMZ, which is extranet firewall, right? So these are the trust boundaries we are actually talking. And then data flow paths. First, we have to identify what are the trust boundaries. I'm taking this example of a data center network. A person who is very much expert in database, they can take an example of databases as well. Or people can take example of application architecture as well. But just to understand this reduction analysis, let's focus on what I'm explaining here. Taking an example of a data center LAN network, basically, or LAN zones, you can say. So this is clear. Trust boundaries are the boundaries separated in different zones with the help of firewall and interfaces. Now we know the data flow path. We have to identify the data flow path. But data flow paths will be identified once we know the different applications and different users and their need, right? So here we can identify it. I will give you one example of data flow. Let's suppose that you have got a user here, this machine and this user need internet access. So basically what will happen, this user will start a connection to a proxy server right here. Let's call this guy a proxy server P. And this proxy server in turns will start another connection. Let's take another dark color, this color, into internet. So this is one data flow, right? Thing which I explained here is in this diagram. So we identify trust boundary, we identify the data flow path. Now we identify the input points. So the data flow path, as explained here, is the movement of data between locations. Then we try to find the input points, right? The input points are the location where external input is received. This is very much clear. This will be very much clear here in the diagram, where the external input is received. So on this switch, the external input is received, right, from user. If the user is on internet, this internet firewall will be the point where input will be received. It will depend on where the subject is and where the object is, right? So those points have to be marked, right? Now, next point is privileged operation. So what is a privileged operation? Privileged operation is any activity that requires greater privilege than of a standard user account or process, typically required to make system changes or alter security. Now, what privilege operation we can think of here? In my diagram, if a user is going to internet via proxy, this connection is just a normal web connection, right? But the privilege operation could be to change the listening port on the proxy server, right? Or making this proxy server, configuring it in a way that it acts like a reverse proxy. So those kind of operation will require super user or administrative privileges, right? So those things we have to identify, right? Privileged operations. So when we are decomposing anything, we have to think of all the possible options, all the possible ways the system can be compromised, right? So we identified trust boundaries, we identified data flow paths, we identified what are the input points, then we identified the privileged operations, right? So if you look into it, it is going from more physical to the logical paradigm. So trust boundaries looks more physical than data flow paths, looks more physical than input points, uh, which could be anything. And then the privilege operations is more logical concept. Input points are a bit physical, but just think that how this whole hierarchy is evolving, right? Now, step number 5 is basically the due diligence. Where is that? It says wait, I think there is some problem. Yeah. So step number 5 is details about security stance and approach, which is the declaration of security policy, security foundation, security assumption. For me, it should be step number 1, but since it is explained, documented, and agreed by everyone, that should be step number 5, though I have no problem with that. But having a security policy, security assumptions, foundations, standards is something which should be on top. And then we should discuss about the environmental factors, trust boundaries, data flow path, input point, privilege separation. So I think if we identify these 5 key points, we are ready for the reduction analysis or decomposition analysis, or we are decomposing the system, whether it is hardware, software, or process even. If we want to decompose, we decompose this way, right? Now, what is the other thing? There is no other thing in this video to discuss. This was something which was left. When I reviewed my last video, I found this topic I didn't discuss in detail. And I think even if I would have not made this video, if you refer my video where I have discussed network boundaries, it would have made sense. But it's nice to make another video to put everything in one place. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there is any question, suggestion, feedback, or any specific point you want me to elaborate, you can always comment. And if you like this video, put a thumbs up. You can subscribe my channel if you find the content useful. And best of luck for your exams.